Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Roland. No, I'm not sleeping, I promise. This is not only a fantastic event, but we're talking about some of the most important things that we need to as a city and a state. I also want to thank Tom Wright and Bob Yarrow, the Regional Plan Association team, and Siemens for bringing us all together to have this conversation today. And I think focusing on the resiliency of our region and overcoming these challenges together is exactly what we need to do as community and business leaders across our state. It's incredibly heartening to see more than 1,000 civic business leaders coming together year after year, debating the best path forward for our economy, infrastructure, transportation system, housing, among other essential qualities of life. And your ideas and dedication to our great city, state, and country really do make a difference. These conversations answer fundamental questions about whether the health and sustainability of our region's economy and economic opportunity is there for every family. It is a moral responsibility of each and every one of us to be stewards of our environment, to be stewards of our community, not just for us, but for our children and the generations to come. Now, I want to focus on how we can reduce our vulnerability to severe storms and rising sea levels and protect our coastal areas, transit systems, and power networks. Because the fact is that climate change is real and it's here. No corner of America is being spared today, whether it's blazing wildfires in the west, massive tornadoes in the south, crippling droughts in the Midwest, routine hurricanes that batter our Gulf Coast, and now right here on the Northeast coast. We can't accept the status quo and think that it's good enough, because as we've seen here in New York, the storm of the century is actually now the storm of the year. In 2001, we saw widespread and devastating damage across upstate New York from Hurricane Irene and Tropical Storm Lee, and just 1 year later, Superstorm Sandy hit us so hard that we could never have imagined it. Water reached places where we never had seen water before. In some areas of Manhattan and Long Island, two separate bodies of water came together and met in one in a flow of devastation, destruction, leaving lives in the wake. The federal government must step up and do the hard work that's required to lead the way in preparing for and protecting against extreme weather events. This doesn't just mean building higher flood walls or moving public infrastructure out of a flood zone. It means the kind of ideas that were shared this morning: smarter, long-term regional planning, an approach to disaster planning. Along with saving lives, it makes complete economic sense. For every dollar that you spend in disaster risk, we save $4 in recovery costs. For example, Superstorm Sandy starkly exposed how vulnerable our region's infrastructure is to natural disasters. Our tunnels were inundated with corrosive salt water that damaged our electrical systems and cut through railways and road infrastructure. The scale of the disaster will take tens of billions of dollars and years for us to fully rebuild. But simply rebuilding is not sufficient. We have to rebuild stronger and smarter to meet the test of climate change and save both our public and private dollars. Right now, tremendous efforts are being made in New York in academic and in not-for-profit organizations like the Rockefeller Foundation to improve our resiliency. Governor Cuomo created the New York State 2100 Commission, charged with developing recommendations to improve the resiliency of our state's infrastructure. And many of you in this room played an integral part in that process, including our RPA President, Bob Yarrow. Mayor Bloomberg created the Special Initiative for Rebuilding and Resiliency, a task force to develop long-term strategies to build and rebuild in a post-Sandy environment. But the federal government still lacks a clear and integrated resiliency strategy. We have the responsibility to be a catalyst for better planning, not just a bystander who picks up the tab to rebuild after a disaster, instead of investing smartly before a disaster strikes. In the Senate, I have introduced legislation to achieve this goal. It's called the Strengthening Our Resiliency for the Nation on the Ground. It's called the STRONG Act, and it gives the federal government an opportunity to build a real plan to strengthen our resiliency. First, the bill requires that the White House Office of Science and Technology lead a high-level interagency group to investigate resiliency policies, identify the gaps in our city and state plans, and find the conflicting policies. Knowing what resources we have, what works, what doesn't, we can write and implement a national resiliency strategy to support local efforts. Now, the vision of this would be a one-stop shop for states or cities or businesses or not-for-profits to gather data, share data, to develop smart resiliency policies, incorporating existing databases and ongoing efforts across a range of sectors, from weather and climate to transportation and energy. This national resource would work hand in hand with local efforts, providing the most recent scientific information and best practices to help our communities plan and survive the worst. As we learned our lessons in Superstorm Sandy, we need to ensure that our communities are thinking broadly about resiliency across every sector of society. Issues like ensuring that gas stations have backup generators to allow their pumps to work during prolonged power outages, using the latest scientific data to rebuild our infrastructure so that we don't see railroad tracks wash away as we did in the Rockaways. Ensure that communities have clear and efficient plans for restoring basic necessities of life after a disaster, so that citizens just know what to expect and what they can count on. The STRONG Act is the foundation to build a smarter and stronger city, state, and nation, and it will eliminate redundancies, ensuring all levels of government are coordinating effectively and efficiently, sharing their expertise, data, and information. And it will harness the expertise of the planning community, including everyone in this room. We are relying on your innovation to revolutionize the way we plan and rebuild our cities for stronger America, and I pledge to be your partner in this effort. Now, even without the added impact of extreme weather, we all know in this room that our roads, highways and bridges, sewers, rails, subways are already crumbling right before us. Fixing this is not just a matter of health and safety, it's a fast track for new jobs and significant economic growth, and it would also strengthen our resiliency. One common sense, nonpartisan idea that I'm most excited to fix this is a National Infrastructure Investment Authority. Now, this isn't a Democratic idea, it's not a Republican idea, it's just a good, common sense idea. I'm leading the effort to write this bill, and I already have a bipartisan coalition of senators to do this work. Now, this authority would work by allowing direct private equity investments into long-term, large-scale projects of national significance. Investors could be pension funds, life insurance, private equity, because of the potential long-term returns that these investments could receive. Better, safer return rates compared to other investment vehicles that are available today. We could develop, as we talked about earlier, a high-speed rail line, rural broadband, healthcare IT, a new electric grid, along with the traditional infrastructure that incorporates climate-smart design innovations. And instead of being run by a partisan political group, the Investment Authority would be run by a nonpartisan group of experts that would work unconstrained by campaign cycles, independent from operating budgets that run through appropriations committees. This is something I believe Congress can pass, because there is nothing partisan about strengthening infrastructure. In fact, it was Republican President Dwight D. Eisenhower's idea in the first place when he created the National Highway System, and it was President Ronald Reagan who proposed to repair the program and maintain it. There's no reason why Democrats and Republicans can't come together around this common sense idea and pass this authority today. It's basically a public-private partnership that cuts government spending, takes pressure off our states and localities with regard to property taxes, and puts investment money to work. And by reducing government spending, we can take the politics out of the process that keeps so many of these projects from happening in the first place. There are projects all across our state that are being held up by politics and red tape today that this would create momentum and an ability to fund. Projects such as the Hunts Point Terminal Produce Market right here in the Bronx, which needs about $30 million to modernize freight lines and improve roadways. These improvements will increase the amount of homegrown, fresh produce that can be distributed through New York City region for the New York City and the region from upstate New York and our local farmers. Projects in upstate like the Port of Oswego. If we could invest $100 million on infrastructure improvements to increase the port's storage capabilities, we would be able to successfully expand international business opportunities as an uploading destination for raw materials and other products. Or on Long Island, where we need billions of dollars to do simple work of upgrading our water infrastructure, like dilapidated wastewater treatment systems. Making these kind of upgrades and these kind of investments are exactly what it takes to strengthen our economy, attract businesses, and make sure that we can continue to grow. Only with infrastructure built for the 21st century can we withstand the extreme weather of our time. The National Infrastructure Investment Authority offers a smart, effective way to finance these critical projects that we desperately need. Last, I want to lead you with one new idea that I think is particularly exciting that folks in this room will want to embrace. And that is reclaiming existing disused spaces and turning them into public spaces to capture the imaginations of millions of New York City residents and visitors every year. With your bold imagination, opening up ourselves to the possibilities of underneath our streets, on our rooftops, in disused infrastructure, we can creatively reimagine the proliferation of pocket parks that will start new engines of community-driven economic growth. Now, we've already seen this working. We've seen it with the High Line that transformed a set of abandoned elevated rail tracks into a world-class public park in Chelsea. Now, we can build on that success with a similar project called the Lowline in the Lower East Side. For those who don't know about this project yet, it would be the first of its kind, and it would transform below-ground rail tracks into an airy public green space. It would use state-of-the-art fiber optics technology to bring in natural light from the top of the ground to below the ground, and it would look like a flowing silver ceiling out in front of you. This would be right here in New York City, not some faraway country that beats us to the idea. This is an opportunity that we should seize on to showcase the power of green solar technology, the creative reuse of subterranean infrastructure, and the bold imagination of New Yorkers to lead the way towards a better, more livable city. Imagine, in one of our least green areas in New York City, a new year-round community park space immune from cold or scorching weather, dramatically improving the quality of life for current and future residents while offering programming to support our youth, artists, and small business owners. And it will be a big economic driver for our city. According to our early estimates, based on the High Line's experience, we think that the Low Line would support or create 4,000 jobs and could lead to about $98 million in economic spending in New York State, with over $30 million in revenue for the city. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is building underground resilient? Well, after Hurricane Sandy, this space was completely dry. There are underground opportunities which, if carefully designed, can be protected in ways that are less vulnerable than traditional outdoor coastal and riverfront spaces. So this is just one example of the kind of ideas that can create huge economic engines in our city. And I encourage all of you, as the great thinkers of our time, to use your boldest ideas, your best ideas, and to think outside the box. Thanks so much.